Good morning. So we should start our event. I would like to apologize for a few minutes, 15 minutes late. Sometimes in Bucharest is normal due to traffic jam. Should manage to be here as much as possible on time, but we know that it's happening in Bucharest. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor and I'm addressing you at the 10th forum of our annual conference. Moreover, I would like to say that this event is held exactly on the 10th of October, the 10th month. So it's a very, purposely we designed to be on this day. As you might be aware, we are accomplishing a round number of our already annual traditional, and this makes us proud as this journey has not easy. Currently, we have reached the point to be one of the most important and unique conference of international experts on the Middle East issue from Southeast Europe. We offer the venue to tackle the issues from different angles. We greatly thank co-organizer EuroDefense Romania and our partners Institute for Political International Study from Tehran, International Institute for the Middle East and Balkan Studies, the Belt and Road Initiative Research Lab, the Mercy Foundation, and a special thanks to the Embassy of the Islamic Republic of Iran, particularly His Excellency Sayed Hossein Sadat Meidani. I would like to thank all of you for attending our conference, and I noticed that for Diplomatic Corps, there are a lot of diplomats and ambassadors. Thank you very much for all ambassadors to be here. We have also this event kind large of ambassadors, especially OIC members. I prefer to keep my speech short and straight, also second the time, to the point, to allow space for the discussion. Also, our panelists will address you direct and comprehensive ideas to leave the time for Q&A session. We have a kind of large number of speakers on each panel. That's why speakers will like to be exactly to the point. No, not historical aspect, directly to the current situation. Our speakers are here to discuss and analyze during the whole day the most relevant issues from the Middle East region. Due to ongoing travel restriction in different countries from the Middle East, we are regrettably unable to ensure all participants as a safe arrival to as a full panel. Some of them are joining online. We apologize for this inconvenience and thank you for your understanding. The purpose of our dialogues is to engage in respectful, meaningful conversations on difficult and often challenging issues, bringing together individuals with different views and expertise and temperaments. Our goal is to conduct these dialogues. Another argument, not to insist that we come to an agreed position, but to gain a deeper grasp of each other's points of view. We come from diverse academic discipline and political perspective to enrich our insight and to help our discern to motivation. Our conference is structured, as you notice in the agenda, for 4 major items. The first one is about great and emerging power on the regional and political security in the Middle East. The second one it's about the latest development in the Middle East. The third one will be about trade routes and different energy connection or interconnectivity. And the final one is our very important project, also Asia Century project, dedicated to a large part of Asia, BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We hope to learn from each other about how to reach the pathway to lasting peace, if it's possible, in the Middle East, and stability in this turbulent world of the Middle East. I would like to conclude here my remarks, and thank you for all your attention, and invite His Excellency Sayed Meidani to follow next for the official opening of our today forum. Thank you very much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellency Minister Severin, distinguished members of the panel, dear Professor Mureshan, dear Dr. Kabamaria, Excellency Ambassadors and members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished participants of the 10th Conference of Middle East, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, Bună ziua, Salam alaikum, Sob Bekhair. It is a great pleasure and honor to speak to you today at the 10th forum of this prestigious conference organized by MEPEI and EuroDefense Romania in partnership with different prestigious institutions, including Iran's IPIS Institute. On my behalf, I would like to welcome all of you, first of all, to Bucharest and to this conference. The first edition of this conference was held on 28 May 2015. 10 years from now, from that moment, hopefully every year we could have this conference. No natural or man-made phenomenon could stop us from having this conference, including COVID, which shows the firm determination of the organizers. Hopefully, this conference has become an important venue where we can come together to discuss the political, economic, security challenges, and of course, opportunities of the Middle East, West Asia, and North Africa. I'm pleased to see how over these years, this forum has turned into an important venue in Romania for sharing views and ideas from my region to the Romanian and European community. This year's conference is holding on an important time. It's duly conference. The world is transforming globally and in the West Asia too, and we are facing many challenges at both levels. However, these challenges have also emerged opportunities to strengthen cooperation between countries of the region, which you may find it from the title and topic of the conference. But regrettably, in the past year, since previous conference, there has been difficult time for the West Asia, especially with the escalation of the Palestinian situation and most recently Lebanon. The unlawful and inhuman conduct and practice of Israel with full silence and absolute impunity has caused huge human casualty and now security concerns. As we gather here today, we must think about how we can work together to address these concerns and challenges, and of course, first and foremost, to find ways to stop the ongoing human casualty. And for sure, we can discuss about building a more integrated and cooperative region. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past years, we have seen some positive developments in the Middle East. For example, the improved relation between my country and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia showed that disagreements can be resolved through dialogue, mutual understanding, and diplomacy. This is a hopeful sign for the region, and it reminds us that diplomacy is a key. However, the security situation in the Middle East is complex, with many overlapping conflicts and interests. For lasting peace and prosperity of all nations of the region, countries of the region need to realize that their security and development is connected to each other. Cooperation on security issues such as fighting terrorism, organized crime, and human trafficking will help all countries of the region to be safer. Iran strongly believes in using peaceful dialogue to address conflicts and reduce tensions within the region with mutual respect. The region is at a turning point economically as well. This presents challenges, but also opportunities for greater economic cooperation and, in some cases, integration, as you may find it on the title of the conference. Iran is committed to supporting these efforts, particularly through the strengthening multilateral economic ties among the countries of the region. Within short time from now on, we will have the pleasure to listen to His Excellency Dr. Sheikh al-Islami, the Vice Minister of the Iran Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and you will hear more about Iran's views on the ongoing situation. But the region now is suffering from a phenomenon. Double standards and hypocrisy in international relations do not help anyone. This is a message from the region. And we must base our actions on the principles of international law, whether respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Lebanon or the right to self-determination and human rights of Palestinians. The nations of the West Asia and North Africa deserve the same rights as others. This is the demand of the region today. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end, I want to express my deep gratitude to the organizers of this conference, especially Professor Mureshan and Dr. Flavius Cabamaria and their colleagues in MEPEI and EuroDefense for their professional job to plan and organize this wonderful conference. And also my appreciation goes to all partners of this conference, which this year extended to other partners as well. Your dedication to promoting understanding and dialogue and cooperation in West Asia and North Africa is truly commendable, and we hope through this conference we can present and provide the Romanian and European societies with fresh and first-hand thoughts and facts from inside of the region. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a successful and productive conference, and I hope our discussions today will lead to a future of peace, stability, and shared prosperity in the West Asia and North Africa. Thank you very much. Mulțumim, سپاسگزارم. شكرا جزيلا.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning, everybody. I hope I don't look so much maybe tired or upset, having arrived early morning and also facing the no-show of the luggage. So it seems that there are many challenges, not only challenges in the region, but also challenges in many, these days technical issues, including the transportation. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here in the 10th conference. It's a decade that we've had this conference, and it shows that we are so much determined, to get chances for communication between us so that we can exchange views and to have the chance to get much deeper understanding about several issues of the mutual interest between all of us as human beings, not only those practitioners of the foreign policy or international politics, but also as human beings, because of the fact that there are issues, critical issues that we are facing these days, which is a threat to all of us as a one single community. So I would like to appreciate Dr. Cabamaria and Professor Mureshan, and also the new partner to us, Mohammad Amersi, and of course, Dr. Hossein Sadat Meidani for giving us this chance to get together and to communicate about those issues that we are interested in to discuss about. Well, 6 months ago, when we talked with Flavius, he told me that we are going to have this conference, this year's conference, on the title of Interdependence and Integration in the Middle Eastern region and the North Africa. And that time, even that time, I was challenging him that, is there any chances for integration within all these difficult and critical circumstances that we are facing? And then we got the result that, yes, there are still windows of opportunity, hand to hand to the very critical and difficult situation we are facing with. So I hope that we get this chance in this conference to talk not only about the challenges and the problems and the threats we face, but also about the opportunities, the possible opportunities out of the situation. I don't want to take much more time. I think I will have another, right? Am I right? Another presentation as keynote speech. Am I right? So I don't enter into more details, and I will try to share my views later on about what is my interpretation and my analysis of the current international order, the impediments to, let's say, this integration that we have been discussing about, and what we can do together to tackle all these challenges. Thank you so much, and I hope that we will have a very fruitful discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presence here. And it's a very special moment also for us as organizers, but I think for the whole community of experts in Middle East and politicians and representative of institutions dealing with the topics of the Middle East. So it's a magic numerology. It's 10th conference, today is 10th of the day of the 10th month and so on. We are going out ahead with this 10, and hopefully at the very end of the day, it will be the mark 10 of the appreciation for our activity together. What is so important, it's, as it was mentioned by His Excellency Ambassador, and also my dear friend Flavius, is the fact that we have here a very prestigious and unique community of experts. This community was built year by year with participation not only here, but also participation to different events around the world, knowing each other, meeting, and so on. And we have not to forget that at the very end of the conference, it's the power of the network. It's a network. People know each other, then they are starting to participate to events in a country or other, to recommend, also to write articles together, to write books. And this very interesting and important book about geopolitics of Iran was written here by as editors Flavius and General Carlos Branco here, and our colleague from Portugal, and it was published in Palgrave also as a result of this kind of meeting. So these are the following up. What I want to stress is the fact that it's important to have a continuity, like His Excellency Ambassador mentioned, continuity is very important. Common memory of the events. And I want to congratulate Flavius and the team of MEPEI from the part of co-organizer EuroDefense Romania for this huge effort which was done in this very moment to organize such an event. And also, I want to stress the fact that I discovered here in this very room that about 30 years ago, and we have here Dr. Qian Tian from Kicker. 30 years ago, we started first contact and traveling to China and starting the discussions about the region, geopolitics, future developments, and so on. And also discovering that here, about 15 years ago, here we have Mr. Dr. Shigolami. It was the first meeting organized by EPIS, inviting people from Romania. We started to discuss, first I remember, it was a very interesting conference on energy security and with important international participation. So this is important to have a continuity and enlarging and deepening this relationship. I hope that it will be something that you will bring with you at home, the memories, the visit cards, and also the desire to continue the dialogue. This is the role of NGOs, scholars, to promote the dialogue. I want to thank very much for the presence here and wish all of you health and for all of us peace. Thank you. I see that I'm a victim of the success of my presentation, so I have to stay here. I was invited to moderate a very... Poftim? Ah. So, we have here also our special guest, so please, Mr. Mercy, if you want to take the floor. Okay. We had forgotten, you know, always it's a, okay, it's better, it's like that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to be here today in this beautiful city of Bucharest once again, but this time I come for a not-for-profit purpose. My previous visits to Romania were business-related. It's a privilege to partner here with my dear friend Flavius of MEPEI, who is a formidable thinker on Middle East issues, and to friends from IPIS, the Iranian embassy in Romania, and our other partners. The conference this year is extremely timely, given the tragedy that we see unfolding in front of our eyes in the Middle East. I would like, on behalf of my foundation, to thank you all for gracing us with your presence here. Your collective contribution will add significantly to our learnings and will help us chart meaningful approaches to alleviate the suffering. My foundation and I are no strangers to the Middle East. I'm historically partially from Iran and have lived in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. I have done business in all of MENA's 24 states other than Mauritania. I have seen and indeed actively participated in the transformational changes that have taken place in the Gulf in the last 2 decades. and in the Middle East as a whole. There is a very clear demarcation now between the haves and the have-nots. Long term, I have hope, which I have to admit that today, more than any time historically, is very slim, that we will see a Middle East in my lifetime that is peaceful, united, and prosperous. But for that, we will need strong and principled leadership, which scarcely is in very short supply. I will stop here and reserve my substantive remarks for later this morning. And once again, I welcome you all here to Bucharest, and I hope you will make new friends and have an enjoyable experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, your President, for these words, and we want to thank you again for your contribution for the success of our conference, helping us to have very prestigious colleagues here with us, and this is an example of power of networks and the importance of cooperation. So now we are moving ahead. So I have the chance to present the first speaker, Professor Adrian Severin, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, former President of Parliamentary Assembly of OSCE, European Parliamentarian, and very known analyst in political life, not only in Romania, international level. So, Dr. Adrian Severin, you have the floor. You want to come here?
Start with a very interesting.
No, it's close.
It's all right? May I?
If there is something wrong, I will tell you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start straightforwardly without any further introduction. The old order, the world order is not yet dead. The new world order is not yet born. It is a time for monsters to express themselves and to show themselves. And we see, unfortunately, the monsters around us, and very particularly, we see them in the Middle East, we see them in Gaza, we see them today in Lebanon, and specifically, unfortunately for Romania, we see them at our borders in Ukraine. Now, of course, this is not a time for crying, it's a time of challenge. And the fact that the old order, which we call Pax Americana, is exhausted, is understood by our American partners as well. Therefore, they are looking forward a new world order. But this new world order should be, according to our American partners, a Pax Americana after the Pax Americana. And in order to achieve a Pax Americana after a Pax Americana, they have indeed launched a world cultural revolution. A world cultural revolution which is based on the woke doctrine, on the post-truth doctrine, on the cultural cancel doctrine, and so on. This is covering a lack of a proper offer, a lack of an offer which is in line with the opportunities of these times. And therefore we are talking about Asia century. Of course, it's a wider Asia because it also covers, to my mind, at least the northern Africa. But while we are speaking about Asian century, we do not state the victory. The victory of the century is not there. Asia century is more a challenge, more of a challenge, not yet victory. But the challenge is always an opportunity and always liabilities and threats. We are here to exchange views. Of course, we cannot teach the Asian countries anything, but we can at least share our fears, our hopes, our aspirations, and also our experience in order to make the Asian century indeed a hope for the world and for a new world order. I think, well, some claim that today the fight in the world is the main confrontation between democracy and dictatorship. I do not agree. Unfortunately, democracy is dead. I cannot be but very sorry about that. But I think that the old Western-style democracy is moving towards oligarchy. And what we see in our Western world, as some call it collective West, it's more of oligarchy rather than of democracy. Yes, there is an authoritarian tradition in the East, but this authoritarianism is moving, to my mind, in the Platonic words, towards the aristocracy, meaning the elites which would devote their capacities for the good of the people. Of course, I'm not going to elaborate on that, but indeed, I think that this is our challenge: how to make the elites of our countries to work for the people, and not the groups of interest to work only for their sake and to promote war in order to, be able to fish in troubled waters. And certainly we have to understand that there is a, transnational or supranational power, and this is the power of the corporations, which are completely out of the national political control. And this is another challenge for us and for this Asian century. Well, I would say that the Asian countries should find, their inspiration inside Asia. They should find the inspiration and the resources for moving ahead with a new order which would indeed, first and foremost, respond to their wishes and aspiration, and in the second step, to the whole world aspiration. They should find inspiration in their and means in their own continent. I'm sorry to say that what we, the Europeans and the Americans, have taught the Asian countries, it's unfortunately national egoism and cultural intolerance. This is what we brought to you. We should remember that in the best times of the Arab Islam, it is the Arab countries, the Arab Islam, who brought us the concept of convivencia and who brought us the concept of rationality. Unfortunately, the history we learn, it's different, but this is not about the truth, it's about our way to praise ourselves. We should remember that we had an order of the Great Turk and an order of the old Ottoman Empire. We had an order of the Persian Empire. We had an order of the Chinese Empire. Certainly, I'm not going to go back to those times, but we have to acknowledge the resurrection of all this civilization. I would avoid the word empire, but of these civilizations. And that is extremely important now, that you could indeed match all this civilization and unite in order to promote a order which is Asian order and which would be eventually adopted by the whole world. Very quickly, I think that one has to replace fragmentation with unification. One has to change the pattern of the association. If I'm not wrong, Asia is the origin of both chess and Go. Well, we Europeans and the Americans, we have learned and we are playing pretty well the chess. We do not understand very well the game of Go. I think that the logic of the game of Go is going to be and should be, the pattern of the new international relations. It's not about the alliances for confrontation. It's about the cooperation for development. The cooperation for development which would allow any interested country to integrate in a cooperation process and to develop it without leaving or the fear to the others that this would be against its security. The chess logic, it's about us uniting against the others. The Go logic is to choose our best interest and to try to promote them not against the others, but in favor of us without threatening the others. I think, and I will understand that we have to end, that after years when we are trying, we, the West, I'm part of the West now, we are trying to tell you that you cannot make it alone, that you should promote each of your interests in alliance with us and under our protection. I'm speaking about the West, not about Romania, the protection of Romania. So it's a time to understand that your association inside Asia, without linking hopes to the great powers of the world, of the Western world, is the only solution. From that point of view, I'm extremely encouraged by the normalization of the relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And I do hope that is a sustainable normalization and which will develop. Because both these countries, to my mind, are interested and are in a better position to follow and to promote their aspirations together inside the region and not by linking their hopes to the support of powers outside the region, which for sure will move their interest in these alliances. They are not coming to make charity. And this is normal, this is natural. We should not blame them for doing that. They are legitimate to doing that, but the others should understand where their real interest lies. I am also impressed by the BRICS development. And I think that this is also carrying some hopes to us. I'm also encouraged to see how the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and this is not because I'm against our European Union confederative relations, not because I'm against the transatlantic structures to which Romania belongs, but because I think that only a balanced world, a world which would bring all powers together in some kind of a dynamic equilibrium, is the only world which could bring us a long-lasting peace. So I'm not speaking against something or somebody, but I think that we badly need this Asian century, we badly need this, let's say, harmonization, federalization of Asian players in order to really achieve a dynamic, balanced of power world. My last point, maybe I would have some others, but I would just acknowledge the fact that we are here not to exchange views, but we are also here to pass messages. I hope that our debates would pass a message to the Romanian government as well, and to the Romanian authorities. We have not time to make analysis of valuation of the various policies in this region of Eastern Europe. But anyhow, I think that even the Romanian government needs some inspiration and should need some ambition as well. And maybe we can learn, if you are more ambitious and more assertive and more self-confident, maybe we could also learn to be more ambitious and not to limit our policy of being some kind of a resonance box of other voices. But the mere fact, and this is the real end, the mere fact that we are here in Romania, in Bucharest, shows that the hope is there. It's important. I'm not sure that we could have the same gathering in many other countries. So the fact that we are able to gather here and to express ourselves here and to exchange views here, it's a positive factor, and we should be encouraged in order to keep the way and to try to really reach a better world order not so far from now. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Professor Adrian Severin. You passed messages for the Romanian authorities, for other countries, and we hope that to the 11th conference we will have also some results. We have to be optimists. So now, by video conference, we have a video message. We have His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Hassan Al-Islami. He is President of EPIS and, at the same time, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Tehran. So, if we can make the connection, thank you so much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Excellencies, dear colleagues, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to have the opportunity once again to be in your esteemed company, even if only virtually, and to share some insights on the recent developments in the Middle East and the foreign policy of the 14th administration of the Islamic Republic of Iran at the outset of this very important international conference. However, before proceeding, I would like to extend my gratitude to the organizers of this conference, namely MEPEI and EuroDefense Romania, as well as the participating institutions, and especially my colleagues at IPIS for their extensive efforts in organizing this conference properly. I am also pleased that this session is being held with the participation of high-ranking officials, including the esteemed foreign ministers of Romania and distinguished scholars from Iran, Romania, and other countries. I would like to extend my gratitude to my dear friends, Dr. Flavius and Dr. Moshen, colleagues at the Middle East Political and Economic Institute, and His Excellency Dr. Sadat Meidani, the Honorable Ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Greeting to all of you from beautiful Tehran. Dear colleagues, the Middle East and more broadly West Asia are enduring challenging times. Exactly 1 year after the legitimate and lawful Operation Al-Aqsa storm by Hamas, a national liberation movement against occupation, over 40,000 people, mostly women and children, have been killed in the occupied Palestinian territories and Lebanon due to the brutal and unethical operations of the Zionist regime. More than 100,000 people have been injured. Thousands of homes, schools, mosques, churches, historical and cultural sites, and public places have been destroyed by regime's savage attacks. Major powers and international organizations have either remained silent or issued ineffective statements and declarations, engaged in endless political and diplomatic talks, or, astonishingly, even supported the child-killing occupying regime. The Islamic Republic of Iran, from the onset of this conflict, has adhered to its principled policy of opposing occupation and supporting the Palestinian people, calling for an immediate ceasefire, crisis management to prevent the escalation of war, providing and delivering humanitarian aid to alleviate the suffering of innocent civilians, and facilitating the swift exchange of prisoners. Iran has spared no effort in seeking an end to the war. However, as you all know, the situation for us took a critical turn with a helicopter crash that claimed the lives of our late president, the foreign minister, and some other Iranian officials. Fortunately, under the management of our great leader and with the participation of Iranian people, we were successful in holding early presidential elections, resulting in the election of a new president and government. This new administration announced its foreign policy priorities as balanced, constructive engagement, and active development of cooperation with all countries worldwide on a basis of mutual respect and common interests. Unfortunately, the regime's transgression of all ethical, legal, and international red lines manifested clearly in the assassination of our esteemed guest, Dr. Ismail Haniyeh, placed the Islamic Republic of Iran in an even more challenging and complicated position. Despite this, Iran exercised a strategic patience for 2 months solely to aid diplomacy and prevent the expansion of the war, refraining from any retaliatory actions. The recent assassination of the Lebanese resistant leader, Martyr Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, demonstrated that the regime not only failed to appreciate this opportunity, but also perceived it as a sign of Iran's weakness. Therefore, to prevent the regime's arbitrary and brutal actions, Iran has decided to respond appropriately and precisely. The promise of Truce 2 operation, Ba'adeh Sadiq, was successfully executed for this purpose. Moreover, we are prepared for any reaction from the regime and emphasize that in the event of another mistake by the regime, our next response will be immediate and significantly stronger and more effective than the previous operations. Nevertheless, this is not our priority. I draw your attention to the fact that from the beginning of the conflict, Iran has utilized all formal and informal diplomatic tools, appealed to the United Nations Security Council and regional arrangements, and presented various plans, exercising restraint and strategic patience to prevent further killing of innocents and to achieve an immediate ceasefire. Accordingly, I believe the cornerstone of the Islamic Republic of Iran's foreign policy strategy regarding this devastating war is the concept of responsible approach and behavior. We are committed to our responsibility for our national security and territorial integrity at the height of our hard and soft power. Simultaneously, we insist on maintaining peace, security, and stability in the region and the world, and of course, combating bullying and occupation. I think today we must invite all parties to act responsibly. Responsible behavior is the strategy we kindly recommend to regional and extra-regional parties. We call on all parties to feel a sense of responsibility and commitment to the peace and security of the region, to diplomacy and negotiation, to alleviating the suffering of innocent people involved, the rules and laws governing armed conflicts, and to human ethics and humanitarian law. Only through our complete commitment to these responsibilities, which we cannot shirk, will it be possible to manage this devastating war, achieve a ceasefire, end the hostilities, and move forward for cooperation and development in the Middle East. By this, I conclude my remarks and hope that this conference achieves its valuable objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and I think this strong message of the importance of diplomacy in this very moment. So we have now another connection, which is prepared, is online, with Dr. Imad Mustafa. He is Dean of the Diplomatic Institute of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Syria, but also former ambassador to United States and China. Now we have the connection, please. Do you hear us?
Good morning. I hope you can hear me well from Damascus. Let me start as customary by thanking both Dr. Flavius Cava Maria from MEPEI and, of course, Dr. Livio Morishan from EuroDefense Romania for their efforts in hosting and organizing this very important conference. Actually, I do not want to make a long set of remarks. I just want to give some thoughts about the current tragic situation in our region. For decades, we thought that maybe at one point the Israelis would realize that they cannot live in peace and prosperity in our region while continuing to humiliate a whole nation, decide its fate, and deny its basic, fundamental, inalienable rights, which is the Palestinian nation, also while continuously occupying parts of other neighboring states, such as Lebanon, Syria, at one point, parts of Egypt and Jordan. For decades, we thought the Israelis will realize this, but then at one point, we gave up all hope that Israel by itself will realize this basic, fundamental, simple fact. However, we did not lose hope. We still thought maybe the United States of America and her European and Western partners, or the so-called collective West, will use its leverage and influence on Israel to explain to Israel the simple fact they cannot continue their policies of occupation and of humiliation to the Palestinian nation and aspire to be accepted as a respected member of the world family. For ages, we thought this might come to a result, but even this we have given up all hope on now. The problem is, with all the atrocities, crimes, massacres being committed on a daily basis today, as we live in this so-called civilized world by Israel, the United States of America and her major Western allies, with certain exceptions, I cannot deny this, continue to give blind, flagrant support to Israel so that Israel can continue doing what it is already doing in our region. Maybe at this point, any thoughtful, logical person would give up hope totally and go into desperate actions. Some would call it desperate actions, some would call it heroic actions, others would call it, I would call it resistance actions. However, the result is the same. No nation in the history of mankind has succumbed to its tormentor, to its occupier, to another state or nation or party that are deciding on their behalf their destiny and their future. Or let me say, not deciding, let me say destroying their destiny and their future. Maybe, despite this very black picture that we have now in our region, there will still be a very simple glimpse of hope, a hope that will make the world powers realize collectively that the only way forward for our region is to end the policies of occupation, of mass killing, and of humiliation for the people of Palestine, and to end the policies of occupation of neighboring countries, such as our occupied Syrian Golan. There will be a lot of discussions. I would love to participate and exchange views about such things during these important transactions of this conference, this meeting. And I will stop here and thank you again for giving me this opportunity from Damascus to join you. I will be following all the discussions online, of course. I really wanted to come, but the sanctions have, the European and West American sanctions have imposed an embargo on flights from Damascus airport to Europe. And also the Beirut airport is being bombarded on a daily basis, so it is closed now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mustafa, for the presentation and this important message coming directly from a region which is now with daily fights and the fight of surviving of the population, civil population. So now we are going ahead and we have I want to invite His Excellency, the President, the Chairman of and Founder of the Amersi Foundation, His Excellency Mohamed Amersi. Okay. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Last Monday, the world marked 1 year since Hamas inflicted the worst attack on Israel since its founding. But amid remembrances of those who died on October 7, there is significant global concern and condemnation about Israel's disproportionate retaliations in Gaza and Lebanon, and the possibility of an even bigger conflict against Iran. Let me set the current scene. The Israeli leadership imagines a new Middle East, one where Iran's nuclear program is eliminated and its regional influence greatly reduced, where Israel becomes part of an alliance of pro-American Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, and where fantasy of fantasies, the Iranian regime is overthrown. For Israel, this should result in a difference of balancing powers in the Middle East, but in my humble view, this remains a daydream. The international community, and in particular the US, should find something familiar both in this vision of a pacified region and in Israel's post-October 7 doctrine of peace through strength and escalation to de-escalate. Washington embraced similar ideas after 9/11, and they met a bitter end in both Iraq and Afghanistan. It is too early to say, but it cannot be ruled out, based on feedback I have received in London, that at some stage Palestinians will come to resent Hamas's brutal recklessness, which has led to more Palestinian bloodshed even than the catastrophe of 1948. The attack on October 7 did incalculable damage to the Palestinian national movement and prospects for statehood. And if Hamas dreams that it can ever take over the Palestinian Liberation Organization and speak for its people at the UN and other multilateral institutions, this group has not comprehended how radioactive it has become internationally. Israel too may face a rude awakening. Its global isolation will be real and it will be long. Its degradation of Hezbollah, which Iran sees as its forward defense force, may persuade Tehran to sprint towards nuclear weaponization. Attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities should set this process back a year, maximum 2, but Iran will surely succeed if that becomes the regime's single-minded goal. Neither Israel, the United States, nor the Arab countries can do much to force regime change in Iran if domestic conditions are not ripe for it, and there's no sign that they are or will ever be in my lifetime. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has made clear that it will not normalize with Israel, let alone enter into a partnership, unless the Palestinian issue is resolved. No amount of Israeli military success is likely to change that assessment. As for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, since I started engaging on foreign policy matters, I have concluded that people have two choices. You can make a judgment that you are going to root for one side or the other, or you can acknowledge that this enduring calamity is a competition between two justices, as can be seen from the slogan adopted by both, "From the river to the sea." It will be resolved or will not be resolved based on leaders who are prepared to recognize that each side has mutual needs and requirements which need to be satisfied. This conflict is also not easily capable of objective analysis. We are all the sum totals of our experiences, of our backgrounds, of our sensitivities, of our sensibilities, and our prejudices. What is a prejudice? It is a prejudgment. I would argue that the best you can do is make allowances for the prejudgments that you have, set them aside in an effort to try to understand the narratives and motivations of Palestinians and of Israelis. This is critically important if we are ever going to have a chance to resolve and to work towards a conflict-ending resolution. And we need honest brokers who use their leverage in a balanced manner. For now, Western policy has been trying to both deter and de-escalate at the same time. And realistically speaking, you can most effectively do one or the other, but not both. For the West, going forward, the challenge now is how to turn Israeli tactical wins in battle into a strategy that secures Israel's people and the future. That takes real discipline, it takes courage, it takes foresight to match the conduct of war to a clear and sustainable set of objectives. That is never easy, but it's an imperative. A question that I was discussing last night but that is very alive in my mind is whether October 7th was so seismic that it will lead to transformational change, or are we likely after a while to return to the status quo ante? President Biden said on October 25th, there is no going back to the status quo as it stood on October 6th. Israel was one country on October 6th, and it is another country on October 7th. In this context, it is also said that Iran's axis of resistance, which was there in full display before October 7th, has crumbled. But please, I would urge you to not so quickly reach this conclusion. I would say that the continued asymmetrical tit-for-tat between Iran and Israel risks devolving into a futile cycle of Iranian missile strikes and Israeli retaliations, each exposing Tehran's somewhat military limitations while failing to finally alter the balance, and potentially driving Iran towards more unpredictable measures in its quest for legitimate, credible deterrence. In the long term, and it cannot be assumed that the Israeli-Iranian conflict could end soon, instead there will be competition between the production rate and sophistication of Iran's offensive systems on the one hand, and of Israel's interception capabilities on the other. With Israel now deeply immersed in a widening conflict, it is unclear whether it can escape the so-called escalatory trap. If Israel escalates, it fuels the escalatory spiral that could at some point exceed its military capability to manage. If it chooses the status quo, then it has done little to improve its security situation. Forcing the choice between escalation and the status quo gives Iran an advantage and is a key feature of its proxy strategy. The Middle East continues to be besieged by at least 3 conflicts. Resolution now seems to be further away than ever before, but it is worth noting that every breakthrough in the Arab-Israeli conflict, with the exception of the Abrahamic Accords, which belong in a different category of outside the conflict zone, it was preceded by terror, insurgency, and war. The 1973 war led to the Egyptian-Israeli peace. Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait produced the Madrid Peace Conference, and the First Intifada resulted in the Oslo Accords. Yet, the Middle East has often proved to be unpredictably predictable. It is clear that last year's traumas, which went far beyond any of these conflicts, will produce pain. But the status quo changes when pain is married to gain. I think it's morally defeatist to say that there will never be a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. However, the 7th October attack and Israel's response may have irreversibly traumatized both parties, at least for the medium term. And the takeaway here is going to be quite clear. Israelis and Palestinians are going to say to one another, you know, the problem is not that we don't understand one another. The problem is that we understand one another only too well. Even in Gaza, where Israel continues its grinding military campaign, a political change is hardly guaranteed. Perhaps the most candid assessment of the fate of Hamas, as outlined in a confidential Israeli security document widely circulated amongst the political echelon in Israel, is that Hamas will survive this IDF campaign as a terror group and a guerrilla organization. But there is no doubt that Hamas has been profoundly weakened as a military organization, and its capacity to pull off another October 7th is greatly impaired. And while polls suggest that its popularity has surged in the West Bank, this is because it benefits from being the only organized alternative to a bankrupt and sclerotic Palestinian Authority. The most authoritative recent poll revealed that the majority of Palestinians in Gaza believe Hamas will win the war and resume its rule. Why is Hamas still relevant when its policies have brought such suffering to the Palestinians? First, the Palestinians are still more likely to blame Israel for their misfortunes rather than their own leadership. Polls have shown clearly that most Palestinians believe that the Hamas attack was justified by the Israeli occupation. Second, Hamas's resilience is linked to the dysfunction of the Palestinian Authority, and the awkward reality is that under the current circumstances, there is little chance of the authority, revitalized or otherwise, returning to govern Gaza without Hamas consent. Then there is the Israeli factor. It's hard to imagine a better recruiting agency for Hamas's extremism than the current Israeli government. Hamas is the organizational embodiment of an idea, the end of Israel and its replacement with an Islamic state. The majority of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza do not subscribe to this goal, but the fickleness of the Palestinian Authority, combined with Israel's annexationist policies, offers Hamas a pathway to dominion over the Palestinian national movement. As for Israel, it's understandable that many would assume that the days of an Israeli leader who presided over the worst attack in the nation's history and the bloodiest days for Jews since the Holocaust would be numbered. That assessment may well prove correct, but for now, Prime Minister Netanyahu is prevailed. It has been said that he represents a glorified real estate US speculator who wants to acquire as much land as possible by any possible means. But let's face it, even if and when he leaves office, his successors have less leeway to make key decisions. A majority of Israelis, while tired of Netanyahu, do not say that they are drifting leftward, opposing his approach towards Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, or that they support Palestinian statehood. In fact, more than 90% of Israeli Jews believe that the government is using the right amount of force against Hamas and Hezbollah, or indeed they should be using more force. As for Lebanon, since the crisis began, diplomatic efforts by the US and France have laid the basis for a more durable, formal arrangement on the blue line between Israel and Lebanon by implementing Resolution 1701. These talks have stalled for now. I have had the privilege of being involved in them and continue to be engaged, and I am hopeful that they could resume sometime soon. Finally, some have pointed to the promise of a Saudi peace offer, and with that reconciliation with the entire Arab world as a solution. But grand plans do not necessarily produce grand results. Yesterday, Senator Lindsey Graham in the United States once again repeated this grand bargain. The Biden administration's scheme to transform the Middle East, a mix of low-income, high-population states and high-income, low-population states by uniting the region's richest country and its most technologically advanced one, is certainly ambitious, but it's also untethered completely from the realities of the Middle East governance. That this vision is predicated on an enduring resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which in turn is premised on unlikely developments in Israeli and Palestinian domestic politics, confers a surreal quality to claims about transformation. But all in all, if you are anticipating quick transformation, an old Spanish proverb comes to mind: best to wait sitting down. In reality, nobody knows when and how this current cycle of death and destruction will end. And while we can all make educated guesses, including myself, it is pure speculation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chairman, and thank you for the strong message and important takeaways.
Yes, you are right. And thank you also for your activities, which are not so much in the public, but your hard efforts to bring peace and proposals to bring the proposals for peace in the region. So now we have the privilege to have with us Professor Syed Hassan Mousavian. He is coming from Princeton University, the Center for Middle East. And you have, Professor, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning. First of all, I would like to extend my appreciation and thanks to the organizers, MEPEI and EuroDefense and all partners for the invitation and organizing such a great event. Whether the world order already has collapsed or is on the verge of collapse, whether the Middle Eastern order has already collapsed or is at the verge of collapse, I think there is a consensus that the world is going toward a new world order, and the region is going to have a new order. But neither is clear. Nobody knows what would be the next world order and what would be the next Middle Eastern order. However, in order to have a successful world order or a new order in the Middle East, I believe the think tanks, academics, politicians, they need to have a correct understanding of the root causes of the failure of the world order during last 78 years, and the root causes of the failure of order in the Middle East after the Second World War. There are a lot of reasons, but I would just mention two reasons why the world order and the Middle East order has already failed. I think the most important reason for the failure of the world order is the failure of the US policies. The US practically laid the foundation of a new world order after the Second World War. And the US has been practically dominating the most important organizations in the last 78 years. But since the World War II, the US has been involved in 80% of all the global conflicts and the wars. The US has been involved in 70% of covert and overt attempts at regime change just during the Cold War. The US has carried out over 80 covert and overt interventions in the foreign elections. According to a study done by the Brown University of United States and Ivy League, since 2001, September 11, to 2023, the wars the US has been engaged caused at least 4.5 million deaths and 7.6 million children starving. The displacement of 49 to 60 million people in the Middle East, rivaling of displacement in the Second World War. Foreign policy in 23, a very credible American journal published a very documented report saying that a total of 6 countries are under comprehensive US sanctions. 17 countries are under targeted sanctions, US targeted sanctions, and another 7 countries are under specific export control sanctions. By 2021, the US has sanctioned over 10,000 individuals, companies worldwide. And countries subjected to the US sanctions collectively now are accounting a little bit more than 1/5 of global GDP. That's why, as a result, in response to the US sanctions, a growing coalition of governments and countries are looking to rewrite the rules of global financial system. And whether we like it or not, the reality is that Americans' global hegemonic mission has become increasingly unviable over the time. After the Second World War, the US accounted 50% of the global economy, and now is 1/4 or 1/5 maximum. And now the US is the world's greatest creditor with $35 trillion in growth federal debts, over 120% of its GDP. The second reason of failure of the world order after the Second World War is the role of United Nations. Based on the world order, the United Nations and the UN Security Council, they are the highest level organizations maintaining peace, security, and stability worldwide. And the UN Security Council is the highest body responsible for international peace and security. This body has become completely ineffective, irrelevant, and discredited. Because if we look at the crisis during last decades in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, all wars, Yemen, Ukraine, Gaza, Lebanon today, Gaza today, and even the military confrontation between Iran and Israel, where is the United Nations Security Council? They have failed to manage every major international crisis. And I think everybody now is convinced the UN Security Council or United Nations is good for statements, resolutions, and perhaps some humanitarian supports. Everybody now is discussing Gaza war, the war on Gaza and Lebanon. But we need to remember it is not a matter of yesterday or today. It is a matter of 70, 80 years. Since 1947, we have 197 resolutions adopted by United Nations General Assembly on Israeli-Palestinian crisis. Since 1948, we have 191 resolutions adopted by United Nations Security Council. The resolution 181, adopted in 1947 on two-state solutions. This resolution is 77 years old. The resolution 242, adopted in 1967, mandating the Israel is forced to leave the occupied territories of Palestinians. We are talking today about war on Lebanon, but we should not forget in 1972, the US vetoed a UN resolution council mandating Israel to to stop aggression on Lebanon. So 50, 60 years ago. However, 145 countries, they have recognized an independent Palestinian states. Despite of about 400 UN resolutions in 80 years, and more than 2/3 of member states of United Nations recognizing Israel as an independent sovereign state, publicly, officially, Israeli Prime Minister, Israeli Parliament, they have denied continuously the rights of Palestinians to have a sovereign separate state. We all remember in September 2023, Prime Minister Netanyahu presented a map for a new Middle East where Gaza and West Bank were part of Israel, there was no Palestine. And the war on Gaza practically started on October 7, a month after, for the last time, Netanyahu denied the rights of Palestinians for a sovereign state. And look at the role of ICG. The World Court has ruled that Israel's occupation of West Bank, Jerusalem, Gaza is illegal, and it is mandatory for all countries to prevent it. But there is nothing for implementation of neither the UN resolutions nor the World Court. That's why the highest level body of international community to maintain peace security has been unable to manage every major wars and crisis from after Second World War and today, Palestinian issue. I think we are going to have, we had a Middle East before war on Gaza, and we would have another Middle East after. But really, I'm afraid we would have a darker Middle East. Because there is no international regional dialogue about neither the world order nor a new order in the Middle East. Do you see any serious dialogue between the Middle Eastern powers like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, Turkey to discuss, to negotiate what new order we would need in the Middle East? No. Is there any international serious negotiation about the elements of the new world order between the superpowers? No. The superpowers are fighting each other. I mean, they are the source of the crisis. This is the reality. And every country has its own strategy for a new Middle East. I mean, the Middle Eastern countries, the US, China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey. I just want to mention two strategies, not undermining the importance of the other strategies, just to show you the ocean of distance and gaps between the two strategies, Israelis and Iranians, they have. Israeli strategy for a new Middle East is based on one-state solution and eradications of Palestine, eradications of axis of resistance, eradication of Iran, normalizing the relation with Arab countries through expansion of Abraham Accord, but forming an alliance with our Arab neighbors to confront Iran, preventing Iranian nuclear capability, while they want to keep their supremacy of nuclear bombs, as the only country they have nuclear bomb in the Middle East. And Iranian strategy is to reduce or eliminate the US hegemony in the Middle East and the dominance of Israelis, investing more on the axis of resistance rather than, to my understanding, I'm sorry to say, rather than more on diplomacy. And of course, they need to increase their deterrence because they have been under sanctions and attacks since Revolution 1979. But they want a regional cooperation system with the Persian Gulf countries. They have already introduced the initiative of Hormuz. But there is no serious diplomacy, neither by the UN, United Nations, nor by the regional countries. At the end, I just want to use the time being here to introduce 7 principles may work for a better Middle East in the future. The first one is a 2-state solution based on the UN resolutions. Middle East is not going to have peace for another 70 or 80 years as long as the Palestinian issue is not resolved. This is really the mother of the crisis in the Middle East and will remain. And the Israelis would never be able to eradicate this reality. This is between Palestinians and Israelis. Nevertheless, we need a great rapprochement between Iran and Arabs, which should start from a security cooperation structure in the Persian Gulf, which the cornerstone of this security cooperation system should be and could be Saudi Arabia and Iran. Whether we like it or not, the fact is the US and Iran both are among the major or the key players in the Middle East. And that's why it is for decades I'm insisting on the necessity and importance of a grand bargain, a comprehensive negotiation between Iran and the US, including the regional issues, because every piecemeal approach between Iranians and Americans after Revolution 1979 has failed and will continue to fail unless they are ready to sit together to discuss broad issues. Fourth is reviving the JCPOA. JCPOA is the most comprehensive agreement during the history of non-proliferation. And the Israelis should not be able to eradicate this asset. This is a big asset for non-proliferation, for the Middle East, for international community. We don't have any other comprehensive arrangement for non-proliferation. Not only reviving between Iran and the world powers, but to regionalizing the principles of JCPOA in order to achieve nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East. Number 5 is the necessity for a non-aggression pact between Middle Eastern countries. Because everybody is accusing about the others' aggression. That's why we need the world powers or the regional powers to think about a non-aggression pact between every member of Middle Eastern countries. 6 is about the necessity of WMD-free zone in the Middle East. I mean, we need 2 major arrangements in the Middle East. 1, conventional arms arrangement. The people, they are talking too much about Iranian missiles, but this is not really the main issue of conventional arms. Iranians, they have their own concern about the conventional arms and power of their rivalries. That's why if there is going to be a just arrangement, we need both a conventional arms arrangement in the Middle East and an arrangement for unconventional arms. Middle East free from all weapons of mass destruction, nuclear, chemical, and biological. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mousavian, for the presentation of this aspect of the role of United Nations and the failure of this kind of international initiatives in the last decades. But also, I think we have to praise all your effort made to come from United States here to our conference and to bring this vision. You are developing there in the Institute of Middle East in the Princeton University. Now I have the privilege to invite Dr. Jean-Christophe Assieux, Baron von Fetten. I have the privilege to invite Dr. Jean-Christophe Assieux, Baron von Fetten, to present his ideas, and also we have to appreciate all the activity of your network and your foundation, what you are doing.
Thank you.
So,
thank you very
thank
much.
you.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Morning.
I'm actually put as a UK, but I'm not British. I'm Franco-German. Nobody's perfect, really. But my institute is indeed affiliated to Oxford University and is in the UK. I would like to thank Flavius. It's wonderful what you're doing here, and the Romanian government. You know, even if you seem not to be sort of thinking that they are around, but I think it's actually, and the minister, the former minister here, I think it's absolutely wonderful what Romania is doing here. Absolutely wonderful. And there is no other country who can do that. And I think it's extremely good that you continue to do these track 2 meetings with Iran, particularly in NATO, in one NATO countries. But there is one thing is true. I will have to criticize you, Flavius. There is one. It's very good. It may be very difficult what I will tell you, but all the discussions are excellent. But they would be really meaningful if you had a representative of the elephant in the room. That is to say, Israel. You need, I mean, I can help you next time to bring someone from Israel. It's extremely important to have a representative of Israel. Next time, I hope it's not in 1 year time, because I think we need a representative of Israel in the next sort of months, not in the next year, okay? But I understand it's also complicated. When I was ambassador, a very young ambassador at 38 at United Nations in Geneva, the conference on disarmament, I had a dream of total nuclear disarmament. And I was young, obviously, and obviously the US and part of the Western P5 made sure that the Article 5 was retained. And I remember Akram, the wonderful ambassador from Pakistan, you know, saying that it is still the best club in town. Speaking about the United Nations Conference on Disarmament, and obviously history gave me reason, because it was obvious that Pakistan has all the right to sort of intervene and sort of overread the CTBT, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, and particularly when the Congress, the US Congress, actually did not ratify the signature of Clinton. Then we are a little bit in the same situation at the present moment. I mean, everybody is sort of getting away from the CTBT, and we have the JCPOA. You know, I was part of the people who sort of negotiated track 2, involving generals from Israel and Iran to come to my home, you know, a week before the signature of the Accord Cadre in 2013, on the 11th of November. And then obviously everybody knows what has happened afterwards with a US president who basically, for internal political problem, sort of did not walk away from JCPOA. And what we have now is a little bit like Pakistan in the past, the same situation of a country, Iran, who has been all what they could to come back to be a good boy in the international world order, and has been sort of sacrificed, you know. And I think it is very sad, because, and I would sort of understand that the Iranians would want to have some sort of a nuclear capability, you know. In this circumstance, I'm not totally it's actually for me quite logical. What we have at the present moment, I think, is an effective war between Israel and Iran. This is what is happening. And I guarantee you that Israel will answer with a barrage of missiles to Iran. When? Obviously, I cannot tell you, but I do not know. But what is complicated is that Iran doesn't have the same help Israel do have in terms of advanced IT and the satellite intelligence to counter the missiles which Iran sent last time. Well, last time it was actually quite good because you used actually relatively sort of fast missiles, then a few of them sort of reached their goal. But you have actually, your country, Iran, is actually a little bit in a weak position because of that. Then I would urge you two things, actually, Iranian delegates here, is one is to do track 2, and as fast as possible, to meet with your Israeli sort of correspondent on a track 2 basis. And I'm offering it, actually, by the way, as I did in 2013. But also, I would sort of urge you to get closer to your Russian friends and to have the help and seek the help from the Russian for their satellite intelligence in order to counter the very probable barrage of drone as well, but missiles you will receive. I think is extremely important. Now, in this situation, why our track 2 could sort of work? Obviously, there is another elephant in the room, in the cupboard of the room, but I think there are a couple of representatives here, is what you, many sort of people here suggested or sort of mentioned, is what we've had as a diplomatic sort of warming between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which was organized by China. And with many track 2 meetings, which I have been involved myself as a former member, the first ever foreign member of the upper house of parliament in China. I have been able to sort of organize a few meetings ahead of the very strong and very interesting sort of Chinese intervention, which prove that China is becoming an engine of peace in this world. Now, I think that a track 2 meeting now between, I'm very concrete and very candid, I do not represent any nation, I just sort of, it's my own personal comments. I think that a track 2 meeting, which I would urge the Iranian delegation to organize with Israel, will need to be with, not being mediated, because I don't think that the Chinese would mediate it, but at least will need to have a representation from China. Because China is the only country who could eventually mediate between Iran and Israel. And this war is not the starting conflict, it's not anything. It's already a war. That this war needs to be mediated as soon as possible. And the only way is to have a track 2 meeting between Israel and Iran, and military, foreign as well, representation, foreign office representation, but the best would be a military representation with a representation at military level as well from China. Now, I would like to sort of say 2 words about the real escalation. But what we are assisting now is just a solidification of 50 years of drama. But the real escalation will be if there is any use of a tactical nuclear weapon anywhere, not only in the Middle East, but also in the current Ukraine conflict. Well, obviously, the Ukraine conflict is little by little solving each other. You might think, well, he's mad, this one. Well, as a matter of fact, the Russians are winning. If you look at the Napoleonic sort of criteria of war, the Russians are actually winning, mainly because of a strategic mistake from Zelensky to have gone to Kursk too late. I mean, if he had gone actually 4 months before, that would have been sort of maybe more sensible, but it was too late. And as a consequence, due to this mistake, and before actually Ukraine entirely collapsed, there is obviously a window of opportunity for negotiation, which is happening at the present moment, and is very likely to succeed, over the winter. But obviously, Russia has got also, if You know, I don't think the US election will make any difference whatsoever. Either Trump or Harris are exactly, the delivery method is different, but the call is exactly the same between the two parties. The thing is that if there is still an interest, particularly from the UK, particularly from Western Europe, and more than from the US, to try to sort of go on with this war, and in order to maybe have a light, you know, of hope for Ukraine to succeed what they want to do, then there might be actually an interest for the Russian to get out of the atmospheric treaty and eventually to use a low-yield nuclear weapon in the atmosphere without having any sort of collateral damage, human damage whatsoever, but obviously which would destroy most of the avionics of our beautiful American planes around Kyiv. Now, this would actually lead the world towards the escalation. And this would be actually very dramatic. This is the reason why I would sort of very much urge, first, at the United Nations Conference on Disarmament, and with the Chinese, we will push forward a new lexicon, which is defining the modern nuclear weapons, because currently it's all come from the Cold War and it's useless. We do not have tactical nuclear weapon. I mean, nuclear weapon is not a tactical weapon. You cannot use any type of nuclear weapon in conventional warfare. It's extremely important. It's a very, very basic principle, and it's important never to cross this red line. As a consequence, a new lexicon is extremely important to be put forward, and this is what we are trying to do with the help of the Chinese. We've got a very strong support, particularly from, obviously, NATO, or at least the three of the west side of P5, but also from China, and then also from Russia, by the way. Quite interestingly enough, for another reason, is because lately we've had quite a lot of non-state nuclear proliferation. You know about that, I'm sure. And as a consequence, to go against it, it is extremely important to have also this lexicon being, enforced and pushed forward and accepted by all the authorities possible. Then I like to sort of very much, I think it's probably coming to an end. I just wanted to say that happily we have the newcomer in a country called China, who have been lucky to participate in many Track 2 meetings, including last year, where we organized at my home meetings between generals of NATO and general of China. And we've been able to sort of pacify this sort of nuclear stance of the Russian. And I think it's very, very good that China is with us now and is showing a face, timidly, obviously, but with, I think it's very important that we rely on them for the future peace in this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jean-Christophe Fichieux. And now I have to say thank you, merci, dankeschön, and so on. You mentioned that. And now I want to invite you to have a presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like.
So you have the floor.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Interesting ideas raised by the previous speakers. Just a very short reference to what Jean-Christophe mentioned with regard to the absence of Israelis in this small conference. The fact that the Israelis and the Zionist, let's say, propaganda and the prevalent position they do enjoy with regard to many international media is something very clear. So they are not absent, they are everywhere, and they have their own narratives, although it is an illegitimate narrative, but they are prevalent everywhere. And the fact that if we're gonna blame for that, we can also blame Europeans for this very emotional behavior with regard to Russia. You know that in Europe, you don't see any meaningful political process with regard to this, let's say, conflict or dispute with the Russians, based on the fact that everything is quite emotionalized here in Europe with regard to the Ukraine crisis. And that's why we see no chance or no window of opportunity for any political settlement with regard to the Ukraine crisis. And you would try to justify that, we accept that justification by the way that the Russians are the aggressors, and we have a principled positions with regard to the Ukraine crisis that first of all, Russians must obey with the international rules and regulations. The same applies to the Israelis even more, because of the fact that the Israelis do not behave as a state. They never behave as a state or a responsible state, as is the narrative of the Western countries or some other countries recognize Israel as a state. Just take a look to what has happened in the last 12 months. Just take a look to the recent incidents, developments in Lebanon. To misuse of, very conventional non-military devices, which are the pagers, which has been widespread among the society, in homes, in the restaurants, everywhere, and against all international regulations, including the Geneva Conventions, to misuse a non-military device for military purposes, for mass killing. Just take a look to that. Okay, so this has been a fact, and based on the fact that Israelis never behaved as states, so it's really difficult to think about having some sort of meaningful, responsible interaction with them with regard to what is happening there. And this is a fact, and even a conference, a small conference like this in many European countries is not imaginable to criticize the behavior of Israel. That's the reality. Well, we have been talking about many transformations, and by the way, what is happening in the Middle East is the accelerator or the laboratory, the test laboratory of the international, the evolution of the international order, which is accelerating, and we are at the threshold situation with regard to the international, changing order. So as Minister mentioned, the previous world order, the old world order is already dead, and the new world order is gonna emerge, maybe not born yet, but is gonna emerge, and this threshold situation is a very critical one in terms of the fact that there are many threats and challenges for everybody. It's beyond the Middle East, the ramifications and the negative implications is for everybody. Due to the fact that when we are talking about the situation in the Middle East and the behavior of Israel, the behavior of Israel is under an umbrella provided by the United States, an umbrella of the extraordinary and emergency situation, which under that situation, under that emergency situation, all international norms and regulations are suspended. This is a very special circumstance that we are seeing after the World War II. And the fact that the very basics and the fundamentals of any international order are the consensus-based narratives between and among different players and between the great powers in particular. And it's really, really interesting that a great power, the United States, which by self-proclamation or self-prophecy is the founder of many international norms and regulations and regimes, is the very root or very beginner of halting all these regulations. We are under this situation, and the Middle East, our region, which has been always a difficult region, is part of the system that is the core of an irregular conflict. Irregular conflict, a conflict which all norms and regulations are suspended again. And unfortunately, this expansionism, exceptionism by the United States with regard to the behavior of Israel is gonna be a rule by itself to make Israel an exception from international norms. Now is a rule by itself, a new rule generated by the United States. And the United States, let me tell you, is at the Sarajevo moment, very critical situation, that the possible negative implications of this danger would be for everybody, including the European countries. A gray area for the birth of the New World Order, very, very painful, let's say, birth that would have maybe, let's say, a baby which will not be at the benefit of anybody. So under this situation, under this extraordinary and emergency situation, nobody is immune from the negative implications. And while under this situation, the only guarantor for the security and for the survival of states is the self-help. That is what we understood under this situation, that the only guarantor for your survival is self-help. Because as Dr. Mousavian, Professor Mousavian just mentioned, the Security Council and the United States is irrelevant, and this irrelevancy of the United Nations mechanisms is a bad news for everybody. So is it good that other actors, other players behave like the United States? I mean, to be also joining this process of exceptionism under this process of halting or suspension of international norms and regulations? What would be the implication? Just imagine. Well, not to be so much pessimistic, of course, I would also try to mention some possible scenarios or possible solutions for the current situation. I need to also mention that there are also good news in our region, which is the Persian Gulf region. Based on the fact that while the great powers are struggling, there is a new momentum for the regional countries themselves to do something which other. They have important momentum, and there is let's say, a relative consensus between the regional countries in the Persian Gulf that they need to think or rethink about a new security architecture for the region. And the important point is that this time, this new understanding is based on changing the mindset of the leaders of the region, that they need to concentrate more on geoeconomic, let's say, geoeconomic thinking than pure geopolitical thinking. Mm-hmm. And based on the fact, the changes in the positive changes in the Persian Gulf region, the important factor is and variable is that this time, this is not a byproduct of the rivalry or the role of foreign actors or foreign powers. This is very homegrown, indigenous phenomenon getting shape in our region, which is so much and highly valued by Iran. And we are now talking about a strong, solid region with the participation and the role, positive role of every country involved in the region. And three important factors with regard to this important momentum is, first of all, the inclusivity, the fact that everybody must be included, the comprehensiveness that all concerns of everybody should be addressed in this situation, and also the indigeneity that every new development must be indigenous inside the region. Well, and it's also a positive trend that there are also new interpretation or meaning of the securities are gonna shape in our region, based on the fact that the countries in the region no need to go to buy security abroad, but to try to rethink about the possibility of having a collective security architecture in the region. Fortunately, very recently, we had the summit of the ACD in Qatar, and we also convened the first meeting of all 8 littoral states of the Persian Gulf together in Doha, and it was very positive trend as well. So these are the new positive dynamics in our region. The good news, just beside the very bad news in the greater Middle East, as you know. So what are the possible solutions? First of all, it was also mentioned by some of the speakers, the fact that we need immediate halt and stop in Israeli aggression in Lebanon and in Gaza. This is the very first requirement needed urgently in the region to be able to think about the other possible medium-term, possibilities and solutions. And to force Israelis and this ultra-radical administration in Tel Aviv to change behavior and not to victimize everybody for the fate of one radical politician, which is Netanyahu. He is victimizing everybody, the whole region, for his own political fate. The United States must pay this price, and other countries who are the allies to the Israelis, they must pay this price to make them understand that this situation will be first of all, put Israelis in a situation that they will lose everything. And also to apply the international norms and regulations to everybody equally. This is also so much needed. And as also mentioned, to return to the very roots of the problem in the Middle East, which is the occupation and the subjugation of the Palestinian people for 76 years. And there must be also common understanding about the fact that those countries who have been advocating Israel for many years, they need also to come and to pay price and to also share the responsibility for the current situation in the region, as I mentioned, that could breed into and bring into a very, very dangerous situation for all of us as human beings. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't take so much time.
Thank you. Tell me. Bitte, 3. So, time is something very relative. We have not to go to Einstein, but we have time for 3 questions, but not 3 presentations. If it's possible to have very short question and also short answers from the podium here. So, who wants to put the first one? The second one?
Everybody's convinced.
The third one. So, you are leaving here after this first session with more questions as answers. But we have to appreciate it was a very special session with comprehensive presentations, and I hope these presentations will have consequences also by spreading the ideas in our countries also. I think that we have to, our podium deserves applause, so please for this. Good? 10 minutes break. It's not coffee break, it's just break. 10 minutes.